Before raising our prices, multiple bootstrap founders advised me to increase pricing for existing customers as well, if we truly believe that our product is offering more value. They're like, just rip the Band-Aid off. There'll be some churn, but revenue will increase. It'll be net positive, and it will get you to profitability faster. Multiple people had told me that. They're like, it will be painful because the people that you'll hear from are the loudest. But because of our price point, because it's so minuscule, the people that actually really care about our product will want to pay more or not care about it. And the people that are price sensitive will eventually churn anyway because their business doesn't support continuing to invest in the software. Welcome to ProfitLed Season 2, or Journey to a Million, Episode 24. I'm Melissa Kwan, co-founder and CEO of eWebinar, and your host. I'm here with my co-host, Todd Parmley, eWebinar's COO. Hey, Todd, how's it going?
It's going well. I am sitting in an empty living room. We had our old sofa removed last night. A new sofa is coming today.
Exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting. They got here so late last night and then realized they couldn't get the legs off the sofa to get it out the door. So we were using a power saw at like 9 o'clock at night. I'm sure my neighbors loved it.
So we have the most epic sofa, I think, in the history of sofas. This sofa is like world famous amongst our friends. It like at one point had its own Google location, but then I removed it because it was like a business. And I didn't really want people to know I lived here. But the whole idea with sofas is like David and I were once talking, like before we had our first home. We're like, why is it that like a sofa has to be sat on? Like everybody wants to lie on the sofa. And when we watch TV, we want to lie in bed and watch TV. And when there's an L on the sofa, everybody wants the L. The only reason you sit on a sofa is if you're like in the lobby of an office. So why shouldn't a sofa resemble a bed where you can lie on? So we always had this idea that a sofa should be the left L and the right L. So like a square. So when we moved to Amsterdam, like I like obsessively searched for sofas that would be the left L and the right L. But the problem is the L is usually not long enough. So it has like a poof at the end. And so the poof is always a little bit shorter for some reason than the full L. So I'm like, what the heck? So eventually we found this one brand that is an extra wide sofa with the poof that is the exact same width. So then we got the left and right L of that and made it a giant, like it's bigger than a king size bed. It's just like a rectangle. It's got like low armrests. So you could like, it's like quite collaborative. So you can sit in any direction. Like I think we fit like maximum like 15 people on here. Like everyone just piles on. Like usually when people come over, they're like a little bit shy. Like one person moves there and then the second person moves there and then it's like over. And then I sent a photo of this to the company and they didn't post it, but I was hoping that they would. But this is something I'm very proud of. This is like some of my proudest work. So I'm excited for your new sofa.
Thank you. I'll let you know how it goes. If we got your sofa, it would take up our entire living room.
We almost weren't sure if it was going to fit in because we have one of those like cute kind of Christmas looking houses in Amsterdam. Like, so it had to come through the balcony, like on one of those elevators. And we have like a piece of that stained glass at the top of this balcony door. And when the sofa came, we realized we had to take that off, but it had been painted over like probably for like a century. So then we had to like chip off the paint to get the stained glass out above the balcony door. But this sofa is not leaving this apartment. Like it is staying. So in the last episode, we talked about why we stayed away from selling to enterprises and how it's going up market is often not a quick path to revenue because it's also quite a quick path to immediate costs. Today, we're going to talk about the 5 pricing decisions we made that turned out to be costly mistakes. So this was also one of my viral LinkedIn posts. So we get to go into more detail, and I'll share that post in the show notes as well. So today we're going to talk about what we learned, I guess, from each decision, why it became a costly mistake. So hopefully this episode will save our listeners some pain. So I think the best way to go through this is just to like go through each one.
Yeah, it's a list. I think that's the best. There's 5, right? Yeah, there's 5.
Yeah. So the first one is we didn't put any usage limits on our 14-day trial.
I'm going to laugh a lot during this in remembering.
Yeah. Like, why did we do that?
Why did we
That was
do
stupid.
this? Yeah.
Like everything you read on the internet is like, limit your trial. We're like, nah, we're different. Why would we do that? I think in the beginning, you just want people to sign up, right? We want to lower the barrier to entry for people to sign up. And we wanted people to feel like they were getting a deal because we weren't paying a lot to get the service up and running at the time. And we really didn't know what the cost of running the platform was. We didn't even really think about calculating that cost because it seemed so minuscule. So for us, because we're an automated webinar company, a usage limit is we did not limit the amount of attendees that you could invite to your webinar every month, while every other webinar company, even though they're live, had limited attendees. But usually they're like concurrent attendees, right? How many people can be in a webinar room at the same time? And so if we had unlimited, it made people feel like, oh, I'm getting a lot more from the software. What we didn't know was that every attendee that watches the video is actually bandwidth that we're paying for from our video provider. And at the time, it didn't seem like it was that expensive because it seemed like we were getting like a lot of gigs.
I mean, we knew, but like it was abstract because it was so low. There was no problem, right?
Well, we didn't have any users, so we didn't know how people were going to use the software. Most importantly, we didn't know how people were going to misuse the software, which turns out is a thing in SaaS. So what ended up happening was the no usage limits encouraged people to sign up for trials over and over and over again. They would just use new email addresses.
Right. And then, since it was unlimited during the trial as well, everything was unlimited.
Emails, also reminder emails, follow-up emails. And there were some people that were trying to send out email scams through our email system. Like, so what they would do is they would, because once you sign up for a webinar, we basically send you a follow-up that says, thanks for signing up. Here's a link to click. So there were like some scammers that would like inject a bunch of people in after they like in the webinar so that like a spam email would go out and you would click the link coming from eWebinar and it would be like, I don't know, save a prince from Nigeria or something.
And it's a scam. It's a misuse that we could never have anticipated.
Yeah.
We just weren't thinking of that. Like,
yeah,
I think we thought maybe, we saw pretty early on that people were, signing up for multiple trials to max out to give legitimate webinars, right? And then cancel and, start over. But people are creative. And
we have faith in people. And we shouldn't have.
People are very creative. And if there's a way for them to get something for free, they'll figure it out.
Yeah. And don't forget, like things like those email spams, like that hurts our reputation. We got shut down immediately by Amazon. And then we had to put in measures to like limit that. And then like we didn't have security measures to alert us when that was happening either. So this was like kind of part of the learning process.
And meanwhile, getting shut down meant that our legitimate customers, none of their email notifications were going out. So it was, it had implications that we could not have. It's funny looking back in hindsight, and we're going to probably say this 12 times today. It's like looking back in hindsight is crystal clear, but I can't actually see a different path that we could have taken. Like,
yeah, because none of us had built product-led companies before,
right?
With this kind of system, right? And also, like, it's not just with the email thing. It's not just our legitimate customers not getting their email sent out. It's like if that happens to you enough times, your email will get flagged as spam.
Yeah.
So you will have to somehow address that.
Yeah. And besides, we were building features. We're trying to get new customers. Like we would have been making up potential problems and trying to figure out the cost of and it was just not even on our radar. So
yeah. And once, like, because of that, we lost $8,000 in 10 days.
Right.
Because we weren't aware of the streaming costs of a user. So there was one guy that had one webinar. He wasn't even paying us yet. He was like on a trial. Like, not only did we not limit the trials, we actually didn't even limit the plans, right? Until like much, much later, which we'll talk about, but this is kind of the same thing. So on the trial, he pumped in 160,000 attendees into his webinar. This is a guy that's like how to make money and, how to make your first $500 on the internet. And his audience was like in the Middle East. So he had like so many people, and he was pumping Facebook ads and YouTube ads. And because it was an on-demand webinar, which meant that people could join right away, his attendance rate was like over 90%. So now you've got like 150,000 people in 10 days joining the webinar. There was no, like, for those days, like at every minute, there was like someone in his webinar. And then I got an alert from Vimeo, our video provider, that said, "Hey, you've run out of quota. Like, do you want to add more data, more streaming data?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" Like, it was like second quarter and we've ran out for the year. And this is expensive. We pay the most for a video provider, obviously, because we're a webinar company. And that was when we were like, okay, we need to put a stop on this. And even then, we gave him time to like pay us back. He didn't want to, and then we shut him off. In the beginning, he was nice, and he was like, "I'm never paying you." But he found the loophole because he had come from other companies. And so because we had that experience, we then worked out the cost of an attendee that would watch a webinar for an hour. And then we limited our trial based on what we calculated.
Yeah, and limited our plans as well, right? We limited our plans and added a add-on where if people hit their plan limit for monthly registrants, they could buy more, right? But what we were actually charging for that covered the costs of those additional registrants.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about that a bit later, but with the just on the trial piece, right? We finally kind of had that conversation to be like, okay, how many attendees does a person need to get to first value? We never asked ourselves that. Why do they need thousands of attendees during a trial to realize the value of our software?
Well, that's a common sense question I think people can ask themselves. It has nothing to do with cost, right? What do people need to experience from your trial in order to experience first value and decide they want to purchase it? And there's value, then you can set limits on that. Set limits on that, even if you're not, there's no reason not to, right? And it will prevent abuse, and hopefully avoid the mistake that we did.
I mean, I think we just wanted to be more liberal with our trial because we wanted to be nice, and we wanted people to be able to use it as much as possible because we believed in our software. If you don't give people a reason to upgrade, they're going to delay that decision as much as possible. And as a bootstrap company, you need the revenue. Like, we're not running a charity, right? People, if they're using this product in their business operation, like to lower costs or make money, then, they should, in theory, be able to also invest in paying for the software. Your software is not a cost, it's an investment. So the second thing is that we didn't offer annual plans from the beginning because it was extra dev work. But I mean, there's a lot of intricacies that, the reasons why we made this decision. But the end result of that was that we couldn't collect cash up front, and especially in the beginning when we needed it most. Even when customers wanted to pay annual, we did not have a way to charge them. And the reason why we can't just do one-offs is because our plans automatically go up and down depending on how many webinars you have. So if you move up a level, we automatically charge you prorated. But so that means that you can't just pay once and we, charge you again the next year. So within that year, if you publish more webinars, in theory, we still have to charge you for that prorated. So we didn't have that system built in. And this was one of the things that we just thought we would delay because we were trying to get the product out as quickly as possible. And the plans that with the subscription we had put in was kind of complicated. So we're like, okay, well, let's just get back to this later.
Well, yeah, I think what we told ourselves was that it would be easy, right?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, and this is related to the next thing we're going to talk about, is that we had this complex subscription plan that made it very difficult to implement annual plans later. So the bigger problem, I think, was that we hadn't thought through what the implications of an annual plan would be for the way we had built our subscriptions. So that maybe if we had, right, then it would have been, we would, and we built for that scale later, it would have been easier. But part of the reason we kicked the can down the road for as long as we did is because we looked at it and we're like, how are we going to even make this work? Like, this is going to be really, really hard to do. So, it was at the very least, if there's one thing I wish we had done differently, was to think through the implications of the annual plan. Because I think we would have seen it. I think we would have seen it and been like, oh wait, this is hard.
I think if we did that, I think we just had like feature fatigue at that point because we just wanted to get this out. But if we did that, we would have also realized that our monthly plans were too complicated.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, because we were trying, like, when you thought, okay, let's take our monthly plan and now extrapolate that to annual. It's like, holy shit, that's like so much complexity now adding it to an annual plan. So,
Yeah. So the other thing that we couldn't do outside of collecting cash up front when we needed it the most was we couldn't offer like partners and affiliates when we were trying that strategy. We couldn't offer them bigger commissions.
yeah, right. Who wants a commission on a $99 a month product, right? And so, and affiliates want to move fast, make a deal, and move on. And we had no way to do
Yeah. So
that
for
for them.
example, like if we had, a deal through an affiliate that you can sign up for 1 year at a discount and it's $1,000, and if they do that, they get 400, then it's worthwhile for them. Right. But we couldn't do it. So we couldn't even test those things when we were testing that strategy. And unfortunately, because we kicked the can down the road, we didn't have time to revisit this particular thing until 2 years later. So for 2 years, we only had a monthly plan. And in the end, we needed to change how our monthly plans worked in order to accommodate the annual plan because we couldn't have an annual plan that worked differently than the monthly plan.
Yeah. Yeah. And once we got, we made the decision, we're going to put it off. Then we were in this, like, we were in the stream of growth, satisfying customers, working on stability. Like, we had no time or brain space to even think about it. So, it was a train that we could not get off for 2 years until we were finally like, okay, let's solve this problem. So I don't know that we had the ability to anticipate that in the time. Again, hindsight's 2020, but it was painful.
I mean, also like not being able to charge people when we really wanted to hire new people was really painful. Like, and a lot of our people are outsourced, right? So if, for example, 3 people on our level 1 upgrade to an annual, that's 1 person for a month. If we wanted to invest in a campaign or a different piece of software, like an additional $1,000 to us is a lot because we spend every dollar that we make. Like now that we're broken even, like we're broken even because we spend every dollar that we make back into the business. Like as soon as we make a little bit of money, we actually hire a different person, like hire a new person, or we increase the salary of the people that are already here. Right. So not having that was a bit painful.
Right, which it goes back to bootstrapping, right? So it's like, the thing that you're not thinking about, or that certainly we weren't thinking about is, I mean, when people pay you on the annual plan, they're paying you less, right? Ultimately, they get a discount for being on annual, but the opportunity that revenue gives you up front is what we were missing, and it was very painful.
Well, also like they're less likely to churn in theory because now they're like invested. They want to invest in it. They want the software. A lot of the customers that go annual, they'll use this for a few months and be like, yeah, I'm really integrated with this and I really like this. Or some companies don't want to have because our product is low cost enough that someone from the company, like they don't need to get this like approved by like on their budget, like someone will use their credit card, but expensing a couple $100 is annoying. So some people will be like, I'll use my credit card, but I'll just expense this once a year. So we didn't give them the opportunity to do that. And so that was annoying. So the third thing is originally wanted to be fair, and we offered prorated credits when users moved to a lower tier. And this was the complication, like that we introduced that made annual plans really hard. So we originally copied Slack's, fair use policy. We thought it was customer friendly, but the problem is, like, we didn't have Slack level funding. So not charging when we should have been or could have been actually delayed profitability. Offering those credits made annual plans way more complicated. So that's why we delayed it. And the thing is, a lot of companies do not offer credits or refunds when you go down a plan, right? The way that normal companies do it, and the way we ended up doing it, is your mid plan or your mid month, you're in a plan, you downgrade, and you have your existing plan until the current billing period. And then on your next billing cycle, you're on the lower plan. That's normal.
Yeah, I mean, I think you said we wanted to be fair, right? We wanted to be overly fair. Like, looking back, in fact, we were like bending over backwards to give people money back that they probably weren't even expecting to get back, you know? So
Like, we gave them credits, and then it would be applied towards the next cycle. Like, it wasn't like cash back. It was like credits in our system.
And think about that. People could go up, down, up, down, 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 like 12 times in a month. And so we're tracking all of these credits and, payments. It was kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, and the reason we couldn't implement that on annual was because if you pay annual, you get a discount. But if, say, you got an annual plan for level 2, and now you go down to level 1, so we do or we don't give you a refund or a credit. Like, why is it that on monthly you get a credit, on an annual you don't? So then the annual looks like a much worse deal. But then we can't give you a discount if you can get a refund.
Right. It's like you're assuming more risk by taking on an annual plan, but for less of the financial, like, incentive that the annual plan is meant to create. So it was stupid.
Yeah, and by doing that, by having this plan, we actually encouraged our customers to downgrade so that they could get the credits back instead of staying at a higher tier. And the reason why people would be in a higher tier is because they have more webinars. But more webinars means more usage means less churn. So there was like a no-win situation for us. We were encouraged them at any time they weren't even using this for 2 weeks that they would downgrade. But if they kept it up, maybe they would also realize more value in our software.
Yeah, I mean, there were customers who had like 4 regular webinars that they were doing, right? And they would publish one at a time and then unpublish and publish the next one that they were going to do and unpublish it. And then, again, it's just what's true is that if people are given a way to reduce their costs that's not too hard, they will do it. They will find your loopholes.
Yeah, and also, like, $50 here, $100 here for a customer, like, who's running a real business, is not that impactful. But when you have hundreds of people doing this, it's impactful for our business. Again, it's this, like, we're talking, like, when we did this, it was like pre-profitability. So it was delaying profitability, right? And so, like, most importantly, this wasn't how everyone else was charging. So it was actually really hard for people to understand what we were doing. Like, they would ask us so many pricing questions and how those credits work and how upgrading downgrades work before they even sign up. So we were introducing support by trying to be too fair because it was a system that they didn't really understand. So there's something to be said about structuring your subscriptions like everyone else so that people just get it right away and you're not delaying them to sign up.
Yeah. I mean, already, because we're an automated webinar product and we have this concept of an active webinar, right, that can have thousands of sessions and registrants per month, but it still only counts as one active webinar. That alone is a hard thing to understand for people who've never done automated webinars. If they're coming from the live webinar world, they're like, wait, you're just giving me one webinar? That makes no sense. So we already had this pricing question that we needed to help people understand, right? And then we added this complexity on top of it, and it became like a thing. It was a thing. Like it was like a, and it became I think it became a barrier to people signing up or figuring it out. I mean, it was just, it was too much.
Yeah, and when we changed that, eventually, like, nobody even said anything. Like, it literally didn't matter. They're like, "Oh, okay, now it's different." Like, because we're talking, like, credits for less than a month, right? These are credits for, like, a week or 2 weeks. But it had such a big impact on behavior, and hence, like, revenue for us, right? We didn't, like, actually measure the difference, but I think it was probably something like 10% difference in revenue, which is huge. But most importantly, we encourage people to use the product more, stay at the higher tier, keep your webinars published.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said just for the, by doing what everybody else was doing, right? Just following a more familiar pricing plan. That came with, not doing that came with a much higher cost than we thought in terms of like headache and explaining and
Yeah. And then we made our annual plans work the same way. Like, that was a major driver, is like, we're introducing annual plans. How do we make them work the same way? And we had to take away the prorated credits. So now, like, somebody signs up for an annual plan, they get a 15% discount. If they go down a level, so let's say like mid-year, they go from level 2 to level 1, they keep level 2 until the end of their billing cycle. And then the next billing cycle comes, we see how many webinars they have, and we charge based on that. If mid-year they go up a level, then we charge them prorated, and they stay at that level for the remaining months. So it's easy to explain, easy to understand. It works exactly the same as monthly. No one's ever asked another question. Imagine that. Yeah. Yeah. So the fourth thing was actually a painful thing. And a hard decision for me at the time was, we grandfathered existing customers when we doubled pricing. So, just to give a bit of context, at some point, I think we talked about this in the previous episodes, our product was bigger than what we were charging. So at some point, people were coming to us and say, we're signing up for you because you're the cheapest. But we weren't the cheapest. They were just getting the most in comparison to other things. So our product finally was able to demand a higher price because we became the best and premium product in our category. So in the beginning, our prices were $49, $99, and $199. No add-ons, nothing. That was like the 3 plans. And then we were going to change it to $99, $199, and $299. So it wasn't like double, double, double. It was like double, double, and the 50%. Before raising our prices, multiple bootstrap founders advised me to increase pricing for existing customers as well, if we truly believe that our product is offering more value. They're like, just rip the Band-Aid off. There'll be some churn, but revenue will increase. It'll be net positive, and it will get you to profitability faster. Multiple people had told me that. They're like, it will be painful because the people that you'll hear from are the loudest. But because of our price point, because it's so minuscule, the people that actually really care about our product will want to pay more or not care about it. And the people that are price sensitive will eventually churn anyway because their business doesn't support continuing to invest in the software. We were not profitable at the time, not even that close. So I didn't feel comfortable potentially losing revenue, even though I'm like, okay, maybe those other founders could be right. I'm not sure. But I thought that grandfathering people that supported us early would be the honorable thing to do. But because we did that, we were missing out on $30K of revenue, even if we factored in the churn, that we could have been investing at the time towards growing our platform.
And $30K per month, let's be clear.
Per month. Yeah. So like our platform costs were going up because there were more people joining every month, more people using the software. So our Amazon was going up, Vimeo was going up, everything was going up. We needed to hire more people to support the business that we had at the time. So all this was happening at the same time, but I didn't really notice it. I didn't really realize because it was like a slow creep. And we gave people a few months to say like, that we were going to increase our price, maybe push them to sign up, and that we would grandfather them. We specifically did not use the word grandfathering though. We said we would hold their price because I was still kind of leaving myself the possibility that we could increase the price later. I just I didn't feel comfortable doing it at that point. So in the end, that's exactly what happened. People that were, price sensitive, they complained because in the end, oh, I missed this important detail. About a year later, or more than a year later, we did end up increasing the prices for people that we held the price for. So for like grandfather customers. And in the end, people who complained were price sensitive. Some people left, but not noticeably. We did not have noticeable higher churn that month. We gave them 6 months in advance notice before we increased the price. I think we sent like at least 2 or 3 emails throughout listing out why we're increasing, the new features that we have. People who saw value in us, like some people even emailed us to say like, I'm happy to pay this because you guys are doing a really great job and you're actually too cheap. And in the end, those are the ones we want to attract. And so I guess what I learned is that if you can justify your price with the product and the level of service that you're delivering, you really don't need to keep a discount, right? Because especially as a bootstrap company, like your only goal is to make sure there's enough money in the bank to pay for your team. If you can't support your team, there is no product. So forget the people who are complaining. They wouldn't even have a product.
Yeah. I was fully on board for this, and I was like, it was like the honorable thing to do. And if you like sort of flip that, it's like, well, there's also honor in getting yourself to profitability. There's honor in paying your team better, hiring more people. Like, I wish we'd thought about it differently, because there, like you said, when the time actually came, I think it actually made it worse to postpone it, right? Because then, even though we didn't say grandfather, that's what everybody heard. And so, like, even a year later, they were like, "You said we were grandfathered." Like, no, if you go and read the email, it's like, they don't care. So yeah, so I think it would have been the more straightforward thing to do, and would have, given us a lot more. I mean, can you imagine getting 30K more a month at that time, having to wait a full year to start making that extra money? And we could have done so much. So it's the opportunity cost.
I mean, in the end, when we did that, I think it increased our revenue overnight by like 35%. And it was because we did that I was able to finally pay myself a salary. So that was year 4, right? This was, I think this was like just before we hit $1 million, like, and that just put it kind of over the edge, right? And then everybody was more comfortable, right? I was on edge for a long time because I wasn't making money for a long time, right? I wanted to pay everybody more, like even just a little bit more would be great, right? So there were just so many implications that, like, from not doing that, from I guess grandfathering existing customers, that, like, honestly, to them, like from 50 to $100 is not a lot, right? From 99 to 199 is not a lot, like just based on how much value we're actually offering our customers. So definitely, like, it wasn't just a price thing, it was just emotionally and mentally, it was so hard because you never want to piss people off. And there are people that really supported you in the beginning, and like you kind of feel like you let them down, but you're here to run a business. You're here to scale a business, right? You can't always make everyone happy. And in the end, we push out features like multiple times a month. We move pretty quickly. Our product keeps growing. It's still a monthly service. They can leave anytime. So I think that people that really value your service will ultimately see this as an investment, and not just a pure cost.
Yeah, you got to put your mask on for you got to help your, what is it? You put someone else's mask on? No, you put your own mask on first on the plane before you put your someone else's mask on. It's like, there is like value in like I think there's even a term for this, like selfish altruism or something like that, where it's like you got to take care of yourself first in order to be able to be of value to others more in the future. So
Yeah, absolutely. And but I also think like our starting price point was really for a bare bone product. And it just didn't justify the effort that we were putting in. And also what ended up happening when we kept prices the same for old customers was we then valued them less. Like we wanted to support them less. We respected them less, and that sucked. Right? It created a hierarchy where a hierarchy shouldn't exist. And the last pricing decision we made, was, we touched on this earlier, was we didn't limit the one thing that cost us the most on all the plans, which was the streaming, right? And the streaming for us is like number of attendees, right? So when we lost 8K on a free user, we finally worked out the true cost of an attendee. So like when 10,000 or 100,000 people are on our system, it really strains the system. So the streaming costs are pretty significant, especially when marketers are spending 10,000 a day to drive registrants to their e-webinars, because we're just part of their funnel. Like they're buying ads, they click the ad, they come into our webinar, they buy something. And so the more people attend the webinar, the higher cost per account. And we should have had more clarity from day one on the cost of the service that we're offering, and applied limits to avoid losing money on supporting those high use customers. And we didn't have a lot of those, but the ones that we had were draining all the resources for the people that didn't use it as much.
yeah, I mean, like we should have done that from the beginning. It's really easy to say that, right? I mean, I think there's a couple of things we could have done. I mean, we really did ignore the fact that every other webinar company had limits. And to be honest, I think we got some customers who didn't abuse our system by being able to say on our website, unlimited everything, unlimited registrants, unlimited, whatever, um, I think what we could have done differently is we didn't have a lot of visibility into abuse at first. We would find out from like getting an email from Vimeo saying you're running out of space. There were no alarms that we had built in our system to alert us proactively when there was high usage. That's probably something we could have done.
Yeah, but I mean, there's no way that we would have known how people are going to use the platform. And most people did not misuse the system, right? Like most people used it, kind of as is, but the few that did, and it wasn't like they were misusing it. They were using it within our boundaries. We just didn't have any boundaries. But the people that were those extreme power users, they drained a lot of resource and money. So it was like disproportionate, right? It was either like you were using the system normally, or you were like this crazy dude who pumps like 200K people in here in like 10 days.
I'm trying to remember, in our terms and conditions, there was like a fair use thing or something. Like, was that in there from the beginning?
It wasn't. So we actually copied terms and conditions of other companies. Like, so some company has this like fair use. I'm not sure if it's called fair use, but it's something like that, where like if your usage is in the top or is more than 98% of everyone else, then we have the right to charge you more. Like it's always in the fine print. Um, yeah, even with Vimeo, it's in the fine print, right? Like in the beginning, we weren't on their enterprise plan, and then it said if you used it, more than X%, then you have to be on an enterprise plan. But then they work with you on coming up with something that actually fits your business.
Well, that is something that people could do, period, right? Put that in their fair use or in their terms and conditions, something like that from the beginning, so that when they do encounter it, it's much, much easier to go to the customer and say, look, you're way out of bounds from what we're able to for what you're costing us versus what you're paying us is so out of balance that we need to have you pay us more, or you're done.
Yeah. So in the end, what we did was we figured out the true cost of an attendee, and then we found out the average number of attendees per account as much as we could, right? Because the spread is quite wide. And then we figured out the maximum attendees that each plan level could have before we break even, and then we picked a limit that felt fair, right? Like where most people by the way. I think 95% of customers will never go above those limits. And then we created an add-on for people, for power users, to buy additional registrants every month if they wanted that. So if you wanted an extra 5,000 registrants per month, you could do that at like $49 for every 1,000. And some people do that because it's just an equation for them, right? They're spending money here, but they're making money elsewhere. They know that with an extra 1,000 people, they're going to make X dollars.
Yeah, and for our product, it is those marketers who have a funnel, right? And they know exactly how their funnel converts, right? They know how much their ad costs. They know how much, like, what their conversion rate's going to be in the webinar. So it is just math for them. It's like, if it makes sense and they can afford it and they're still making a return that's acceptable to them, then they do it. So, we don't make so much on that add-on, right? Like we were just trying to basically accommodate people from being able to use our system more.
Well, we were trying to limit our loss. Like, it wasn't like, oh, this is going to be a huge moneymaker. It's like, how do we not lose money by supporting this? Yeah. So, I mean, these decisions are never easy to reverse, right? Because they require significant dev work or and delicate customer communication in the case of increasing prices. Like, nobody likes limits. Nobody likes having their features reversed. But it's just a business, right? It's like we have to be profitable, and we can't be losing money when we support you. And most people understand that. But that also, because that was our first add-on, then we had the mechanism in our subscription built in to have more add-ons. So that was when we started building things like the custom domain, the Marketo, Salesforce, like that kind of stuff. But if we never did that, we wouldn't be able to find other ways to actually make more money from the upsells. And the upsells are really created for people who use our system a lot more.
Well, that's 5, right?
Yep.
Those were
5.
our 5 mistakes.
we did everything else perfectly.
Yeah, everything else was perfect. Yeah, that's right. If only we hadn't made these 5 little mistakes. So, I can reiterate them. We didn't put usage limits on our 14-day trial. We didn't offer annual plans from the beginning. We wanted to be fair and offered prorated credits. That's the craziest one to me. Yeah. We were being overly fair with our pricing, which hurt us. We didn't grandfather existing customers in when we raised our prices, and we didn't limit the main thing that was the primary cost of our platform, right? So those were our big mistakes. What's your hot take for today?
Yeah, I guess my hottest take, just based on all these things, is that a lot of people are scared, like people like founders are scared to increase prices, but it sucks more when you can't pay yourself and your team. So if you focus on delivering value and not discounts, right? ROI instead of like the lowest cost possible, I think that's just a better way to approach the business. And that's how you have to think of your business and yourself, is you're providing value to other people. And this is an investment. And we're not, like, so specifically in our case, we were not charging a lot. So this theory applies. It's probably, very different if you're charging like in the thousands. You can't just double your prices. But yeah, this is really applying to like our price point, which is like kind of in the hundreds. And what's your hot take?
Well, before I give my hot take, I just want to say that, it's hard when you're in the fear, or especially when you're bootstrapped, you're trying to growing. It's really hard to stay in that mindset that you're giving value, and that putting yourself and your team first is critical, right? But yeah, if there's a way to maintain that mindset while you're growing, I think that that's really important. I'm just seconding your hot take. But for me, it's like, you're going to make these mistakes. You're going to make them. So try to, first of all, adjust quickly, put mechanisms in place if you can to be alerted of them. When you feel that there's something wrong, don't ignore it. Go right into it and look at it instead of kicking the can down the road. You'll be grateful that you didn't do that.
If you've been enjoying this podcast, I've got a small favor to ask. The only way ProfitLed grows is by word of mouth. So if you'll do us a favor and hit the subscribe or follow button wherever you're listening or watching this podcast right now, it'd mean the world to us and help us continue to spend time making these episodes for you. Ping me on LinkedIn if there are particular topics you want us to get into this season. Send me any feedback you have on this podcast because I love hearing from you. My name is Melissa Kwan, last name spelled Kwan. To get notified of new episodes, join our mailing list by going to ProfitLed.fm. I promise to only share things you'll actually care about. Thanks for listening. Bye now.